Imagine your phone is on a video call and you walk from one city into the next. The call never drops. How does the network always know exactly where to find you? The answer is a quiet background process called a registration update. And in 5G, it's one of the most important jobs the network performs. Every phone, every connected device, what engineers call user equipment, or UE for short, has to stay registered with the network's brain, a function called the AMF, the Access and Mobility Management Function. Think of the AMF as air traffic control for your phone. It always needs to know your rough location, your capabilities, and how to reach you. In this lecture, we're going to break down exactly how a device tells the network, I've moved or I'm still here, what triggers that message, and what the network sends back. By the end, you'll understand the full registration handshake and why, without it, your call really would drop. So, when exactly does a device talk to the network like this? 5G defines four distinct registration types, and each one answers a different question. First, initial registration. This happens the very first time a device turns on and joins the 5G system. It's currently in a state called RMDE registered, meaning the network doesn't know it exists yet. Second, mobility registration update. This is our main topic today, and it fires when a device that's already registered needs to update the network about a change. Third, periodic registration update, a kind of still here check-in sent on a timer. And fourth, emergency registration, a special fast path used when a device needs to place an emergency call, even without normal credentials. Here's the part that matters. Once a device completes its very first registration, it enters a state called RM registered, registered with the mobility management function. Everything we talk about next, mobility and periodic updates, only happens from that RM registered state. The device is already known to the network. It's just keeping that relationship current. Let's dig into the biggest trigger for a mobility registration update: movement. Every cell in a 5G network is grouped into what's called a tracking area, or TA. Think of it as a neighborhood of cell towers. Now, the network doesn't give your device just one tracking area to remember. It hands your device a whole registration area, a cluster of several neighboring tracking areas, precisely so you're not bothering the network every time you cross a single street. Here's the part that matters. A mobility registration update is triggered specifically when your device moves to a new tracking area that falls outside that entire registration area, not just outside one TA, outside the whole cluster. Picture someone driving from Los Angeles toward San Diego, crossing from one tracking area to a neighboring one inside the same registration area. No update needed. The network already expects you might roam there. But once you cross the boundary of the entire registration area, your device must check in immediately. And critically, this applies whether your phone is actively connected on a call, a state called CM connected, or just idle in your pocket with data off, CM idle. Either way, if you cross that registration area boundary, the update fires. Let's slow down on something we breezed past. Why does it matter whether a device is CM connected or CM idle when it crosses that registration area boundary? CM stands for connection management, and it describes whether the device currently has an active signaling connection to the network. CM connected means the device is actively talking to the AMF right now, say mid-call or streaming data. CM idle means it's registered but quiet. No active connection, saving battery, just listening for pages. Here's why 5G bothers to hand out a whole registration area instead of just one tracking area at a time. Signaling cost. If the network forced a mobility registration update every single time a device crossed into any new tracking area, a commuter's phone could be sending update messages every few minutes just from a normal train ride, draining battery and flooding the AMF with traffic for no real benefit. By granting a registration area, a whole cluster of tracking areas the device can roam through freely, the network deliberately trades a little bit of not knowing your exact cell for a huge reduction in signaling overhead. It only asks for an update once you leave that entire cluster, which is a real, meaningful location change. And this cost-saving logic applies whether you're actively connected or sitting idle, CM connected or CM idle. The trigger is the same. Leave the registration area and the device must check in, no matter what it was doing at the time. Movement isn't the only reason a device sends a mobility registration update. Two more triggers matter just as much. The second trigger, the device needs to update its capabilities or protocol parameters, the technical settings it originally negotiated with the network back when it first registered. Say your phone gets a software update that unlocks a new 5G feature or changes which network slices. Think of these as dedicated virtual lanes on the network. One tuned for gaming, another for video streaming. It's allowed to use. The device needs to tell the network, here's what I can do now, and notice. This can happen with or without also changing tracking area. You don't have to move for this trigger to fire. The third trigger, the device wants to retrieve LADN information. LADN stands for Location Dependent Application Server Identity. Here's the plain English version. Some applications, like local traffic services or a factory's private automation system, only exist in specific locations. LADN is the network's way of telling your device, this particular app service is only available while you're standing in this particular area. When your device needs to look up or refresh that location-bound service information, it triggers a mobility registration update to fetch it. Now here's a very different kind of update, one triggered not by anything the device does, but by silence. This is the periodic registration update. Imagine a smart water meter sitting in a basement. It's registered on the network, it's not moving, and it might go hours without sending any real data. How does the network avoid quietly forgetting about it, or worse, still counting it as connected long after its battery died? The network's solution is a timer. When your device first registers, the AMF hands it a periodic registration update timer, a countdown. If that timer expires without any other message being exchanged, no calls, no data, no movement update, the device is required to check in anyway with a periodic registration update. It's less I have news and more a simple I'm still here, still fine. This is exactly why it's called predefined inactivity. The trigger isn't a change of state, it's the absence of one for too long. This one mechanism is what lets the network confidently reclaim resources from devices that genuinely disappeared, while keeping accurate track of the millions that are just being quiet. Every registration request needs to answer one basic question for the AMF. Who exactly is asking? And 5G actually offers 3 different ways to answer that, each suited to a different moment. The first is the SUCI, the Subscription Concealed Identifier. This one matters mostly at initial registration, the very first time a device ever contacts the network. Your permanent subscriber identity gets encrypted before it's ever sent over the air, specifically so nobody sniffing the radio signal can track your real subscriber ID. Privacy baked in from message 1. But encrypting and decrypting that every single time would be wasteful. So after that first registration, the network hands the device something faster, the 5G GUTI, the 5G Globally Unique Temporary Identifier. Think of it as a temporary nickname the AMF assigns you. It changes over time, it's meaningless to an outside observer, but the AMF instantly recognizes it and maps it straight back to your real subscription. This is the identity used in almost every mobility and periodic registration update, exactly because it's fast and it's already private by design. And then there's a third option, used far more rarely, the PEI, the Permanent Equipment Identifier. This identifies the physical hardware itself, the handset, not the subscriber or SIM. It's the identity a network reaches for when it needs to recognize or block a specific device, say a phone reported stolen, regardless of whose SIM card gets put into it. 3 identities, 3 purposes. CUCI protects you at first contact, 5G GUTI keeps every later check-in fast and private, and PEI identifies the hardware when the hardware itself is what matters. One more registration type deserves a quick mention before we move on. Emergency registration. This is the network's break glass procedure. If a device needs to place an emergency call but can't complete normal authentication, maybe it has no valid SIM credentials or its usual registration failed, emergency registration lets it register onto the network anyway, specifically and only to reach emergency services. It's a narrow, safety-critical exception to everything else we've discussed, and it exists for exactly one reason. A call for help should never be blocked by a paperwork problem. Let's watch this actually happen, message by message. Our device is sitting in the RM registered state, already known to the network. Something triggers an update. Maybe it crossed a tracking area boundary, maybe its timer expired, so it sends a registration request to the AMF. Watch what's packed inside that one message. First, the registration type. It explicitly tells the AMF this is a mobility registration update, or this is a periodic registration update, so the network knows which situation it's handling. Second, an identity, either a SUKI, a subscription concealed identifier used the very first time to protect privacy, or far more commonly at this stage, it's 5G GGUTI, a temporary scrambled ID the network already assigned it, or in some cases, a PEI, the permanent equipment identifier of the hardware itself. Third, and this is the detail that matters for mobility, the last visited tracking area identity, if available, so the AMF can see exactly where the device is coming from. The AMF processes all of that and sends back a registration accept. This response carries four things: a fresh 5G GUTI, a brand new temporary identity for the next cycle, an updated registration area, the new cluster of tracking areas the device can now roam through freely, any mobility restrictions that apply to this device, and a reset periodic registration update timer, restarting that inactivity countdown. That's the entire handshake. One request, one accept, and the device's status with the network is fully refreshed. Notice one item writing along in that registration accept message. Mobility restrictions. What are those exactly? Mobility restrictions are rules the network attaches to a specific device that limit where it's allowed to roam or what service it can get. And there are four kinds. RAT restriction limits which radio access technologies, the actual radio standards, like this or a future generation, the device is permitted to use. Forbidden area marks out geographic zones the device is not allowed to camp on or request service in at all. Think of a fenced-off zone on the map. Service area restrictions are subtler. They don't fully forbid an area, but define zones where only limited service is allowed or normal service is allowed, tailoring exactly what the device can do region by region. And core network type restriction limits which type of core network, say a 5G core versus an older evolved packet core, the device may connect through. Here's the part that matters. These restrictions aren't just enforced from one place. The functionality is shared between the device itself, but only for the restriction categories it's actually been told about: the radio access network and the core network. All three layers cooperate, so a restriction set centrally by the operator is actually respected everywhere the device might try to connect. Let's pull this all together. A 5G device stays connected to the network through four registration types: initial registration, when it first joins; mobility registration update, whenever it crosses into a new registration area, updates its capabilities, or needs LADN information; periodic registration update, its regular still here check-in; and emergency registration, the safety critical exception. Every one of those updates rides on the same simple exchange: a registration request telling the AMF what's changed, and a registration accept handing back a fresh identity, an updated registration area, any mobility restrictions, and a reset timer. And those mobility restrictions, RAT restriction, forbidden area, service area restrictions, and core network type restriction, are what let an operator precisely control where a device can roam and what it can access, enforced jointly by the device, the radio network, and the core. So the next time your call survives a drive across town without a single dropped word, you'll know exactly what just happened behind the scenes. Your device quietly told the network, "I've moved." And the network quietly said, "Understood, here's your new address."